Well, Razorback fans, we have 5 practices down from fall camp for the Razorback football team. So have we actually learned anything, or do we know anything? Has anything changed? Well, let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I'm also the host of Out of Bounds. You can catch every weekday afternoon from 1 to 4 on 103.7 The Buzz and 103.7thebuzz.com. Today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Head over to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or enter in promo code LOCKEDONCollege for a free white tech hat with any purchase. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. I can promise you that. Hope everybody's having an absolutely wonderful Thursday as we are once again getting closer and closer to college football season starting up, especially for the Razorbacks. And they have completed 5 practices at this point in time. Actually had Wednesday off. And we got a chance to talk about wide receivers, about the secondary, about offensive line, a lot of different position groups and diving into it. But the thing that always makes me kind of laugh, and we'll talk about this a little bit in the next segment, is the amount of reactions that come in from these practices, or people who are fired up and pumped, or upset and angry, or indifferent, don't care, just don't give me, I don't want the labor pains, I just want the baby, I get the season here, whatever it is. People have their own thoughts about how they approach fall camp and what can be really driven from it. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I have the ins and outs on practice, that I have been there every single time throughout the entire practice and been able to draw a diagram of who's doing what and how amazing they are, and this is why it's good, this is why it needs to improve. As much as we get access to, we're not going to have those types of breakdowns and research. It's going to be based on what we've seen for the short period of time and what we've heard from coaches and players in those press conferences. That's what we're having to base it on. But a few things, though, that have stood out to me, and I think that this is the number one thing, is this team overall, when it comes to their conditioning, when it comes to their size, when it comes to their speed, when it comes to their strength and conditioning program under Ben Souders, has dramatically improved from what we've seen and what we've heard. We know that there's a lot of speed on this team. Some guys are really getting after it. We know that guys have gained a lot of weight, and most of them have gained it in the best types of ways. You're talking about Rocket Sanders, who's bulked up to 242. We know that the offensive line and defensive line across the board are sized-wise exactly where they need to be an SEC caliber type of line in trench play. You got tall wide receivers, 6'4", 6'5", 6'7" guys. You have tight ends that have bulked up. You got a quarterback in KJ Jefferson that's still built like a truck. You got the secondary players who have not only gotten some height on them through the transfer portal, but also gained some weight on them in the right ways. And I think this is a huge tip of the cap that you have to give to Ben Souders. Ben Souders has done a phenomenal job. And, we could sit here and talk about okay, but what does it mean to translate to the field? We don't know. We don't know. I don't know. You don't know. It could be banging. It could be awesome. Everything's going according to plan. Everything's perfect. There's no worries. This team is electric and they're great. Or it could be nothing. It could be bad. Or it could be just indifferent. Whatever it is, we don't know. So people are going to yell at me back, I've heard this before. Okay, so what? So what that you've heard it before? It's what we've seen. It's what we've heard. And that's what we do, is we talk about it. And I've seen this team and how big they are. I've seen this team and how faster that they are and how they are saying that they've increased their speeds. I see it. So that's what it looks like. It's got to translate on the field. We all know that. But that's what it looks like right now. And I think that's important to get to that point, to where you have guys that aren't going to be completely and totally outmatched. I think back to the time, and this is not me hating on anybody. I'm not hating on any Razorback football player, because there are a lot of these players that were really good. But sometimes, even as good as a player may be, there are some limitations to what they could do. You think back to when he had Grant Morgan and Hayden Henry at the linebacker position. Solid dudes that did a lot for this team. There's no question about it. But there were times where they were pretty limited because they just didn't have the size and the speed to get to where they needed to be. We've seen it happen sometimes on the offensive line, not so much with Sam Pittman, but it has happened. The defensive line, think about it, what it was in 2021. I mean, you had 3 D linemen, and that was it. Like, there was nothing going on there. You had 3. And even 2 of the guys were barely looking SEC caliber. One of them was. But it made a difference. It mattered. It mattered a whole lot as far as, how it is approached and, the type of systems that they were in and some of the limitations that they were up to. So I love the size of this team, and I love the speed of this team, and I love how the conditioning program is seemed to really be elevated to a next level, because we know that's been so important to have. And I guess the real case of when we're going to see how effective it is goal line situations, like we've talked about. Those first and goal and second and goal, or like 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1. Can you get the push? You have to. As an offense, there's no excuse for not getting a yard. You should be able to get a yard every play. Every play, at least a yard. Can they do that this year? That's going to be the key. They look like they can, but can they actually do it? We'll see. But the other thing that really stood out to me, and this is something I don't think that maybe people even realize, because sometimes I have to go back and check it out myself. Not only the amount of depth that this team has, which is improved at every position, you got depth, but I'm talking about experienced, senior-laden, upperclassmen, bona fide dudes who have been around college football, who are 22, 23 years old, that are really across the board. I love that. And that's been something that's been missing at certain positions during times. Because I'm like, if you just go through the starting lineup of this, folks, like that's the thing, is if you just look at I shouldn't say the starting lineup, because we don't know what the official starting lineup is, but we'll take all right, what could be, should be, maybe be the starting lineup for this Arkansas team. We'll start with the offense. Listen to this. You got Andrew Armstrong. Well, no, we'll start quarterback. Let's go. KJ Jefferson, senior, dude. Rocket Sanders, junior, dude. AJ Green, junior, dude. Dominic Johnson, junior, dude. Then you go to the wide receiver position. You got Andrew Armstrong, who's a senior. You got Isaac Tesla, who's a senior. Tyrone Broden, who's a senior. Isaiah Centania, who is a redshirt freshman. He's one of the, it's one of the exceptions to the rule. But then you go on the offensive line. You got a guy like Tykeus Crawford or Patrick Kutas, just depending on there. But you got a senior in Tykeus Crawford and then a sophomore in Kutas. You got Joshua Braun, who's a junior transfer. You got Bo Limmer, who's a senior. You got Brady Latham, who's a senior. And then you got, Devin Manuel, who I think is going to be a starter, but he's a redshirt sophomore, so he's a third-year player. That's just your offense. Everybody but 2 players is your right tackle, Patrick Kutas, a sophomore, and even Isaiah Centania, he's starting at wide receiver. That doesn't mean a guy like Bryce Stevens can't be thrown in there, or Marlon Crockett, who's a transfer, Jaden Wilson. Like, you got some dudes there that could throw in the mix to have experience, but you have two of your offensive players are the only ones that are not upperclassmen. Now look at the defensive side of the ball. Trajan Jeffcoat, senior transfer. Torian Carter, redshirt senior. Landon Jackson, junior transfer. And we'll even throw in the guys that will probably play a bit. Anthony Booker, the transfer, senior. Eric Gregory, senior. Zach Williams, senior. Rashad Stewart, senior. John Morgan, senior. Cameron Ball, he's a sophomore. But Marcus Miller, senior. Kelvy Rose, senior. All seniors. What about the linebacker position? Yeah, Chris Pupal is a sophomore. But how about Antonio Greer, senior transfer? Jaheim Thomas, senior transfer. What about a guy in the secondary like Dwight McLaughlin, senior transfer? Lorando Johnson, senior or junior transfer. Hudson Clark, senior. James Singletary, freshman. But you got Ladarius Bishop there as a senior. Al Walcott, senior. AJ Braithwaite, senior. Keon Stewart, senior. All of these players, you probably got annoyed by me saying all that. But the point is, I wanted to go through it all. Of the key contributors, you got a starting 22. So we'll throw in that you probably are going to play 30 total between the offense and defense, maybe a little bit more, but 30 of them. So of those 30 players, we'll just use that number. You're talking about what? 5? Maybe 6 that are not juniors or seniors? That's what I've noticed. And that's what I like. Are they the highest and most talented players? Some of them are. But what can overcome a lot is you having guys that have been there before, who have played at this level before, who are ready for this level and are adults, young adults, not kids, not teenagers still at 18, 19. Young adults, guys that are ready for it. I think those are the things that really have stood out to me more, and seeing how much that's appreciated and how they're approaching the games. Because so many transfers, they know that this is their last shot, and they want to make the most of it. So I love that part of it, and I hope to see a lot more of it as we go forward into practices too. But let's be honest, sometimes practices can get a little out of hand. We'll talk about that in just a second. But folks, I got to tell you, football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you get bonus bets back every time they win in the regular season. That's huge. And just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you get bonus back in victory. I mean, are you kidding me? For every victory, you get bonus bets? You can also use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and a lot more. So I don't know what you're doing. Don't stop wasting time. Get over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets back with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Now, this was a question I got asked and I wanted to address when talking about fall camps, because a lot of you know, of course, who have watched this podcast and listened to me, that I'm optimistic. I'm always usually optimistic. That's not to say that I don't recognize when things are bad or when things need to be worked on. And I think most people can, if they, stop being such a hater on it all the time, if they actually looked at it, and that's like, I'm not saying Arkansas is going to go 12-0. I'm not saying they're going to win the SEC West. In fact, I'll have my final predictions, but 7, 8 games, maybe 9 if everything goes well. But that's what I'm looking at. So I'm an optimist, but it doesn't mean that I'm stupid unrealistic. And during these times of fall camp, because of how much we get to see or how little we get to see, and also what we hear from coaches, that's where we start to take the approach of like, all right, we're getting closer. We're getting to the point to where we can start feeling out predictions. So how are we feeling? And if you base it solely on the things that you've seen in the very limited time, while also looking at it from what you've heard from coaches, not only head coach Sam Pittman, but the rest of the assistant coaches too, you'd be hard-pressed if you truly believed them and bought into them, which I'm not saying they're lying, but if you truly believed them and bought into them, you would think that this is going to be a great year. Because there's not really been any negative news, knock on wood, that has been brought out about the team. No, like, oh, well, this position's really struggling, or, oh, we're having major issues with this, or, oh, we're having problems getting them up to this level. Like, you haven't heard any of that. Now, does that mean that it's not going on? Who knows? Maybe they're just not saying anything. But if we base it on what the coaches tell us, it looks like things are going really well in the fall. After 5 practices. Still a lot of time left. But after 5 practices, it's going good. And then when we get to see it in the media, I know guys like Trey Biddy has done a great job with hogsports.com, among his others, of doing really good practice reports and recaps. But if you read their stuff and see what they're reporting on, it looks really good. You see good throws being made, great catches being made, solid tackling going on, big turnovers. Like, you just see a bunch of different highlights. You're like, okay, so we got these highlights going on, and we got this coaching staff that's saying how great everything's going. I don't understand how we can't be great this year. I don't understand how we can't be a team that takes that next step and maybe wins 9, 10, 11 games. If it's as good as what they say, how can we not get to that point? How do we not feel that way? I know it's tough, isn't it? It's tough not to get too excited about it, because we only know what we know. And when we know nothing but good things going on, we start to build our expectations up. When the expectations get built up, it either, one, ends up being a beautiful thing that gets us excited for the beginning of the season and moving all the way forward, or 2, it leads us up to disappointment. Last year was a disappointment. I had expectations. You did too. I thought that team was going to finish 3rd in the SEC West. I picked them to finish 3rd in the SEC West. And honestly, they probably should have finished 3rd in the SEC West, but it didn't happen. So this year, how do we keep from doing that? How do we keep from our expectations and our overall vibe of the season getting the best of us, to where we end up being disappointed, or we end up yelling at each other because it's like, you said they were going to be good. Because trust me, I'm going to get yelled at a lot. Like, they're going to be, you idiot, you said we were going to be good. Well, here's my solution to this, folks. Here's all you got to do. Understand what it is. Understand what we're watching. It's practice. We're talking about practice. You can do both. You can still see the things that are going on that are good while also playing the wait and see approach until we see it on the field. You can do that. We all can do that. It doesn't mean you have to turn on yourselves to be so negative to keep yourselves from being disappointed. Like, there's no point in that. Be excited for the season. Be excited about not what the season will be, but what the season could be. That's where my excitement always comes into play. I don't know what the season will be, guaranteed. Nobody does. But I know what it can be. I know what the potential is. And I know that this season could be a great one for Arkansas. I'm excited about the potential. So that's how you got to view it. View your excitement level for the potential of what the team can be, not for what they will be. Now, once the season's over, give your reactions and feel that way. But right now, just be excited for what it could be. That's how you keep yourselves from getting too crazy with your overall vibe of what could happen for this team, too. Folks, I got to tell you, though, about Birddogs. Listen, these things are so comfortable. I've been wearing them every single day. They're amazing. If you have not yet purchased one of these great items from Birddogs, you're missing out. They're stretch khaki shorts that are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and the leg to give a truly sculpted look. So if you're someone that's really trying to show off the buns of steel, if you've been going to the gym and hitting those squats and you want to say, hey, ladies, look at this. Check them out. That's what Birddogs does for you. They make sure that they exponentiate it and make it look good. Because I'll be honest, I don't have good legs, but when I wear Birddogs, I do. Because that's how they do it. They make them look so great, but they're comfortable too. And they're form-fitting, and they make it to where they have the anti-stink and sweating wicking fabric that keeps it going all day long. So they're just perfect for every day. You can wear them around the house. You can wear them out and about. You can wear them golfing if you want to, but you got to check them out. I'm telling you, it's amazing. So head over to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or enter in promo code LOCKEDONCollege for a free white tech hat with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or promo code LOCKEDONCollege for a free white tech hat. You won't want to take off your Birddogs. I can promise you that.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to watch it yet, but Netflix came out with a Johnny Manziel documentary. I know everybody remembers old Johnny football, and I know how everybody probably feels listening to this podcast about Johnny football. I feel the same way. I hated Johnny Manziel. I rooted against him actively for him to fail at every turn, and he was really annoying, and part of me really enjoyed seeing the downfall that he had after his career in college was over. I was one of those people. But time is healing all wounds, and now I don't really care. In fact, part of me even finds Johnny Manziel a little bit endearing because he's interesting. He's an interesting cat where he didn't care about what anybody said or thought. He wasn't full of crap. He was who he was, and he was unapologetic about it. And I think there's a level of respect that I have for people that are that way. He didn't give a bunch of coach speak. He didn't give a bunch of, canned answers or try to do things the right way. He did it his own way, and it really benefited him for a period of time. But it was really good. And I encourage anybody to watch it just for the sake of, some interest. And it's only an hour and 10 minutes, so it's not even that long. But it's really good stuff. So I would encourage everybody to go and check it out if you have a chance. But one of the things that got asked when I was talking about on my radio show, though, is, who has been the best Arkansas quarterback that they've ever faced? Like what, as far as quarterbacks go, because Manziel came to Fayetteville and put on a show, and we know Manziel put on a show down in College Station the first time they played against Texas A&M there. So who's the best quarterback that Arkansas has ever faced? Now, you could throw around a lot of names into this one, boys, because Arkansas's faced a lot of them. If you think about it, Arkansas faced, just look at the NFL now. Arkansas faced Patrick Mahomes. They faced Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones. Like, that's just 5 off the top of my head that are in the NFL right now, starting for their respective places, and Arkansas went up against. But then you throw in, even back in historical purposes, Johnny Manziel, Cam Newton, how incredible those guys were, and the time that they were there at their schools. Tim Tebow. And that, again, just in the SEC era. You could go back, Andre Ware, when Arkansas went up against him, was really good. So this is an interesting question I got asked. So I started thinking about it. I'm like, I may not be able to speak for all of Razorback Nation because, as you know, I'm a little bit on the younger side than some. Not as young as I once was. But to me, the greatest quarterback that I've ever seen Arkansas play in person, mind you, in person, because I don't even think watching on TV should count, but in person, to me was Johnny Manziel. Because Arkansas played Cam Newton on the road. They played Joe Burrow that year. He was great on the road. So, you got to think about that. And other guys put up some good performances, but, I think it had. And Patrick Mahomes was great and Fayetteville, but I forgot. I went back and looked at his numbers. So he's 26 of 30, which was really great. But he only threw for 240 yards and had 1 interception and 2 touchdowns. But he rushed for 2 more touchdowns, too. But point is, I think it'd be Manziel. Patrick Mahomes had a great performance, and he'd be a close second. We're just talking about in that moment and in that game. But Arkansas's faced quite a few of them. And it's really annoying because Arkansas, of course, never won any of those games, it felt like. Some of them they actually should. But good stuff, though. Good stuff. I encourage everyone to go watch that Netflix special. Appreciate everybody listening in the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at BuzzJohnNabors for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.